The wind doesn't howl here. It cuts. It slices through skin, through bone, through thought itself. She can't feel her fingers anymore. She stopped trying hours ago. Around her, the others huddle against the wreckage, what's left of it. Metal twisted into shapes that don't belong in nature. Seats torn from their bolts. Luggage scattered across ice that stretches forever in every direction. Someone is crying, but the sound is muffled, distant. The cold swallows everything. They've been waiting for rescue for 3 days. No planes. No helicopters. No voices crackling through radios. Just wind. Just white. Just the slow, creeping realization that help isn't coming. One of them looks up at the sky, empty, pale, indifferent. Her lips are cracked and bleeding. Her eyes are hollow. She whispers something no one hears. And then she closes them. This is the story of a women's football team that crashed in Antarctica. A story of survival in the most unforgiving place on Earth. A story where every breath was a battle, every hour a test of will. And not everyone made it out. They weren't supposed to be heroes. They were just athletes. Teammates. Friends. 23 women from Uruguay, bound together by years of sweat, late-night bus rides, shared dreams. They played football not for fame or money, but because they loved it. Because it gave them something bigger than themselves. In October of 1972, they chartered a plane to Chile for a match. A routine flight. Nothing special. They packed their gear, kissed their families goodbye, and boarded a twin-engine Fairchild with laughter still on their lips. The youngest was barely 19. The oldest, a team captain, had just gotten engaged. They talked about the game ahead. About what they'd eat when they landed. About the weekend they'd have together in Santiago. Normal things. Human things. The plane lifted off under clear skies. No one thought about what Antarctica could do to the unprepared. The flight path took them over the Andes, a mountain range so vast and brutal it's claimed hundreds of aircraft over the decades. But their pilot was experienced. The weather report was acceptable. For the first hour, everything was fine. Then the clouds thickened. The turbulence began as a shudder. Then a jolt. Then something worse. Inside the cabin, the laughter died. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Hands gripped armrests. The pilot's voice came through the intercom, calm, professional. He told them to fasten their seatbelts. Said they were encountering rough air. Said it would pass. But in the cockpit, instruments were failing. Visibility was 0. The altimeter readings made no sense. They were flying blind. And they were descending. Fast. The mountain came out of nowhere. 1 second, white fog. The next, a wall of rock and ice rushing toward them at 200 miles per hour. The right wing sheared off first. The sound was ungodly, metal screaming, rivets exploding, the entire fuselage shaking like it was being torn apart by invisible hands. Then the tail section ripped away, sucking 3 passengers out into the void. The cockpit slammed into the mountainside and crumpled like paper. The rest of the plane, what remained, skidded across ice and snow, spinning, tumbling, disintegrating. Inside, bodies were thrown against seats, against walls, against each other. Bones snapped. Skulls cracked. Screams were swallowed by the roar of destruction. And then, silence. The kind of silence that only exists in places where nothing lives. When she opened her eyes, she didn't know where she was. Blood in her mouth. Pain in her ribs. Cold, so cold it felt like fire. Around her, the wreckage. Seats torn apart. Luggage everywhere. A window cracked but still intact, showing nothing but white. She tried to move. Her leg wouldn't respond. Someone nearby was groaning. Someone else was screaming a name over and over. She turned her head and saw the open sky where the tail used to be. That's when it hit her. They'd crashed. And they were alone. 12 of them were dead on impact. Crushed, thrown, or lost in the initial destruction. The survivors, 33 in total, crawled out of the wreckage into a nightmare. The temperature was 20 degrees below zero. The wind was relentless. The altitude, over 11,000 feet, made every breath a struggle. They had no winter gear. Most wore jeans and sneakers. Some were in shorts. No one had packed for Antarctica. Because no one thought they'd end up here, the first night, they huddled inside the broken fuselage, using seat cushions and luggage to block the wind. They tried to start a fire with matches from someone's pocket, but everything was too wet, too cold. One of the women, a midfielder named Lucia, was a nursing student. She moved through the wreckage, assessing injuries with shaking hands. Broken legs. Fractured ribs. A punctured lung. Head trauma. Frostbite already setting in. She had no medical supplies. No painkillers. No bandages. She used torn fabric from suitcases. She set bones with ski poles scavenged from luggage. She held the hands of the dying and whispered lies about rescue coming soon. But inside, she knew. No one was coming. The plane's radio was destroyed. The emergency beacon had been in the tail section, gone. They were too high for search teams to spot easily. Too remote. Too buried in cloud cover. And the crash site was invisible from above, white plain, white snow, white death. On the second day, they heard engines. Distant. Faint. But unmistakable. Everyone who could move scrambled outside, screaming, waving arms, reflecting sunlight off mirrors and metal scraps. The plane passed overhead. And kept going. They stood in the snow, watching it disappear, and felt hope die in their chests. Hunger came fast. They'd eaten everything edible within hours. A few chocolate bars. Some candy. Wine from a bottle that somehow survived. By day 4, there was nothing left. The cold devoured calories. Their bodies burned through energy just trying to stay warm. Stomachs cramped. Hands trembled. Someone suggested melting snow for water. They tried. But snow in Antarctica is different, dry, crystalline, hard to melt. And drinking it without boiling lowered their core temperature even further. They were starving. Freezing. Dying slowly. And the mountains offered nothing. No animals. No plants. No life. Just ice. On day 8, one of them said it. The thing no one wanted to think about. There was only one source of protein left. The bodies. Frozen. Preserved. Still human, but no longer alive. The group fractured immediately. Some refused. Called it monstrous. Unthinkable. Others argued it was survival. That the dead would want them to live. Lucia, the nursing student, sat in silence for hours. Then she spoke. "If I die," she said quietly, "use me. I don't want to be the reason someone else doesn't make it." Others nodded. Some cried. But one by one, they agreed. They started with the bodies furthest from the wreckage. The ones already covered in snow. They used broken metal to cut. They worked in pairs, quickly, without speaking. No one looked at faces. It tasted like nothing. Like frozen meat from a freezer. But it kept them alive. Barely. By day 15, the psychological toll was worse than the physical. Some stopped talking, stopped moving, just stared into the snow with blank eyes. Others lashed out, screamed, blamed. One woman tried to walk down the mountain alone. She made it less than a mile before the cold forced her back. Another stopped eating altogether. Said she'd rather die clean. She did. On day 18, the storms came without warning. Winds that knocked them off their feet. Snow so thick they couldn't see their own hands. They sealed themselves inside the fuselage with luggage and snow, creating a cave. The temperature inside was barely warmer, but it kept the wind out. For 3 days, they sat in darkness, breathing, waiting, wondering if they'd be buried alive. When the storm finally passed, 2 more were dead. Hypothermia. Quiet. Final. On day 27, Lucia made a decision. She couldn't wait anymore. None of them could. She gathered the strongest survivors, 3 women who could still walk, and proposed something insane. They would climb down the mountain, find civilization, bring help. It was suicide. They all knew it. But staying was suicide too. Just slower. They left at dawn. No map. No compass. Just the hope that if they kept descending, they'd find people. The others watched them go. Some waved. Some prayed. Some just closed their eyes. For 10 days, the expedition team walked. Through snowfields. Across glaciers. Down slopes so steep they had to slide. Their feet bled. Their lips cracked. Their vision blurred. One of them collapsed on day 6. Couldn't get up. Lucia stayed with her until she stopped breathing. Then she kept walking. On the 37th day after the crash, Lucia stumbled into a valley. And saw smoke. A farmhouse. Tiny. Distant. But real. She ran. Fell. Crawled. Ran again. When the farmer opened his door, he found a woman covered in frostbite, barely able to speak, holding a piece of paper with coordinates scrawled in shaking handwriting. She whispered 2 words. Plane crash. The rescue helicopters reached the site 2 days later. Of the 33 initial survivors, 16 were still alive. 16 women who had endured 72 days in Antarctica. 16 women who had eaten the dead to stay alive. 16 women who had refused to let the cold win. They didn't speak much about what happened. Not for years. The world called them heroes. Miracles. Survivors. But they didn't feel like heroes. They felt like people who had done the unthinkable because there was no other choice. Antarctica doesn't care about your story. It doesn't care about your strength or your will. It just waits. And these women refused to let it have the last word. They survived not because they were extraordinary, but because they chose, every single day, to take one more breath. One more step. One more heartbeat. And sometimes, that's all survival is. The refusal to stop.